obsessed with this whole thing, it's because I've seen people die. And that kind of thing really changes you, especially when you see somebody who looked the part, behind closed doors. They're experiencing one of the worst mental health crises. We oftentimes look to Islam in order to guide our ways, our day-to-day lives, especially our personal habits. But what about modern day challenges that feel like unexplored territories that don't fall under halal or haram, yet they have the potential to be extremely harmful? Today, I'm going to explain the purpose of Islamic law. Where do differences in opinion come in? And when it comes to personal individual life, what does it mean when it comes to the application part of it in order to solve modern and unknown problems? If you know nothing about me and have not come over here from TikTok, you need to understand that I care about individuals. I care about application rather than theory. While it sounds nice to preach and tell everybody what to do, data is showing that a lot of people are suffering behind closed doors and are doing the bad things behind closed doors where people don't see them. This in turn is causing a lot of people within the community who are suffering and dying behind closed doors, and we don't know how to fix them. So I think this approach is going to help. My whole life is proof that application of life on this side is beautiful. It works. You can balance your deen, your life, your relationships, and everything together. And seriously, you can find the solution, and it is within Islam. So let's start with the requirements, as in what is the why behind Islamic law? Islamic law is derived from two sources. This is the Quran as well as the Sunnah. But first, let us start with the purpose of the law, and it is to protect and preserve the two things. Number one is going to be community, so as a whole, and then number two is going to be the individual. I wanted to speak on this because there was this one lady I was talking to, and she was living in the Middle East, and she wanted to be a lawyer, and she was taking classes in the Middle East and did not even realize what the purpose of the law was, because a lot of people who are teaching us our religion are not actually Muslim. Orientalism, defined in the Oxford Dictionary, is a representation of Asia, especially the Middle East, in a stereotypified way, which is regarded as embodying a colonialist attitude. So when you're learning about Islam, especially Islamic history, you have to be very aware of this. So the two sources are going to be the Quran, which is explicitly stated statements. That is where the rulings come from. And the second one is the Sunnah of the Prophet. And realize I did not say hadith, but his seerah and how he implemented it. Because as Aisha said, the Prophet ﷺ is the walking Quran. So everything is together. But Orientalism has taught us otherwise. So you have two extremes. You have Quranists who, due to the questionable roots of hadith, declare Muhammad was just a man, and even though it is within the Shahada, and stick to just one side. What you find amongst this group is that they have a major challenge with character and good attitude and are very dismissive, and sometimes can even be the most liberal people. If it's not in the Quran, it's not explicitly stated, then they can do whatever they want to. The other extreme is going to be traditionalist, or those who love the Prophet ﷺ and are so involved with everything in the Sunnah, and they extremely follow it one by one. But they don't know how to draw the line between what is the Sunnah and what is wajib or fard, because it has been so culturally integrated. So you find a lot of people who are not really living in the West, or if you have a large Muslim history, then you're going to have a hard time with this. People literally don't know the difference, and it took me a lot of time to understand what is the wajib behind wudu, for example, and what is a sunnah. The wajib or the fard part of it is extremely simple, but the sunnah has multiple steps, 3 times this, 3 times this. The two problems that this group of people have is that they don't know what the root value or the purpose of the rulings are, and oftentimes the Quran is just an option. They memorize it, but they don't really understand what the values or the root purpose of these rulings are. But of course, this is life, and there will always be two extremes, and the best path is the middle path. The second thing to recognize is that there are systematic challenges such as politics and wars, which are influencing how we understand the religion. The Quran might be the way that it is, and the history of the Prophet ﷺ is the way that it is. But if you actually go back and look into Islamic history, what you find is that there are a lot of messed up understandings which are impacting the Muslim's mindset because there isn't proper education. So what the mind loves to do is that if there are holes, it's going to fill it in with what it has. So that's what's happening. That's happening on a subconscious level. So that means if you are born in a secular age, like all of us are, we are picking up values and we don't really realize how they're related or what part of it is actually cultural. For instance, secular law is one. If somebody does a crime, they go to jail. They have to pay for it in one way. While Islamic law, if you look at it before the 1900s, before the 1800s, or before before the Ottoman Empire fell, you would see that a lot of laws can exist on one topic. So if somebody commits a crime, they could go to jail, they can pay for it, there can be an eye for an eye. There can be multiple different paths and it can all be valid and coexist. But for our average mind that is born of this decade, of this century, we're gonna have a hard time accepting that there can be multiple valid opinions in which they can coexist. So you can see this if you go into a masjid. For instance, the different madhabs, right? How do you pray? If somebody's praying like this with their hands by their side, there could be Maliki, but a lot of people assume that they're Shia because we don't have that full knowledge. We don't understand Islamic law because we are prioritizing, systematically speaking, because we live in a capitalist economy, we're prioritizing our education when it comes to us actually getting a job so that we can survive. So all of these Islamic knowledges, they're just optional and you don't see them until you are in Muslim communities, and when we have differences in opinion, we can't be tolerant. So studying Islamic history pre-interference, I would like to say before the 1400s, you would understand a lot more, and that's what I personally love to do. So let me give you an example. Sharia, drinking in private, alcohol versus in public. Now, if you travel to the UAE, you will see that drinking in private is allowed. Where does this come from? So this is a Sahih hadith, and it was Umar, and he was walking around doing his patrol. So he would be patrolling the city at night with Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, and on one occasion they were walking with a lamp of a household light which caught their attention, and they approached it until they heard a voice of who it was inside. So Umar grabbed the hand of Abdurrahman and he said, "Do you know whose house this is?" And he said, "No." Umar said, "This is the house of Rabia, and they were inside drinking right now. What do you think?" Abdurrahman said, "Indeed, I think we have done what Allah has prohibited." Abdurrahman said, "Indeed, I think we have done what Allah has prohibited for us. Allah Almighty said, 'Do not spy.'" Realize how this is a direct statement. And we have spied. So Umar turned away and he left them alone. So if you go into the Middle East, you'll realize why this is the law. And this is where the law of alcohol, consumption of alcohol behind closed doors is not a problem. But in public it is. The other one is zina, and this one is fascinating. We had actually in class, we had to go through all of that and why that works and how the corn industry would have never happened if we were following these rulings, but that's another topic for another day. Now that you know all of this, why is this? It's because Sharia is focused on community first and then individuals, but enforcement on individuals behind closed doors is personal. There is no compulsion on religion. So much so that compelling somebody in their religion is categorized by scholars as a major sin, by the way. I just wanted to give you a bit of a background, but I'm not gonna be getting into culture, okay? I don't care. I care more about the scientific research behind this and how that is impacting our society on the day-to-day level. And this is why. It's because of the habit loop. People will do whatever they want to do in private. And even of the 5 pillars, everything is private. If you pray 5 times a day, nobody knows about it. If you fast and are not going behind and taking some snacks, nobody knows about it. If you are saying the shahada and it actually means something to you, nobody knows about it. There's no receipt when you're giving charity. Nobody knows when it comes to religion, whether you're doing it purely for the sake of Allah except Allah, or if you're cheating behind closed doors. Nobody can articulate and define that unless you let them know. People will be two-faced, and that's why you have a community of two-facedness, by the way. Even within the Quran, the verses about hypocrites, about munafiqun is so much. When you read it, it makes you want to shake. You know what I'm saying? Like, you feel a little bit off about it because you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was so descriptive. But we have people living this way in their day-to-day life. So a munafiq is somebody who appears to be a Muslim, but secretly disbelieves in their hearts as well as in their actions. We all have some sort of, I was listening to a scholar yesterday and he was saying we all have some sort of hypocrisy within our actions. So when we are listening to these verses or reading these verses or going through them, like I do with the tadabbur, you need to realize and question yourself because the nafs needs to be attacked so that you can improve yourself. This is how we get into the differences in opinion. So it's not the why, right? The Sharia is what dictates what the why is. For instance, having to pray 5 times a day is a requirement. However, questions as to is it if you leave them off completely versus if you do not. Yesterday, I was learning about the fact there are literally a school of Muslims who say that praying is not for us, doing Hajj is not for us, that the Imam will do it on our behalf. So they wouldn't fall within the circle or the umbrella of Islam because of that opinion. You have to pray 5 times a day. But whether it's going to be, combining them, doing them back to back, that is the how and the step-by-step approach. So this is where the differences in opinion come in. But that is not in order to erase what the Sharia says of that being incumbent upon the average Muslim. So another example that I want to give you is zina. Do not get close to zina is something that is said within the Quran. The interpretation of that now is going to vary. So you can see one group of people on the umbrella of Islam, right? I like to think of it as a bell curve. You have the extreme of the extreme who say segregation of men and women is so important that men and women never see each other. Okay, so that would mean that zina cannot happen. But now if you are woke, okay, what you see is we have a lot of LGBTQ things happening because of the massive segregation that is happening on that side. And then on the other side, you will also see people who have absolutely no problem with interactions of male and women, but they don't fall into the zina. So the zina part, or not doing zina, is a requirement of the law. Okay, so that's where the Sharia comes in. But when the differences of opinions come in is whether do we need to segregate them? That's where the urf and the culture comes in. So that's why we get two extremes. Are both of them okay? Correct. But will shaitan come in and mess up all of these people? Yes. Every single person is vulnerable to this. You're a human being first. You will have your nafs, which is your desires, and then you will have, the waswas that is constantly happening, which is the negative thought loops that are impacting your habits and how you act. But Islam is judging you on your actions rather than your thinking. So each of them are within the umbrella, as you notice, but they have the potential of going out of the umbrella because of the extremeness of it. And that is where the compulsion in religion, no compulsion in religion, comes into. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be the one who is judged. You're the one who is actually going to be doing what you're going to be doing behind closed doors. So what my scholars or the teachers that I learned under said, stay within the umbrella. If you want to be on one extreme and that extreme, okay, but stay within the umbrella. But a lot of people get so confused, and it's so confusing to them, they just leave, and that's fish out of water. In my personal opinion, as somebody who's creating this video, it is so important to understand the full breadth of Islam, because this is supposed to be a religion that's supposed to transcend and be until the end of time, right? So when the Prophet ﷺ died, it was, your religion is completed for you. So our ability to maneuver through times and how they change while sticking to the purpose of the rulings is so crucial and so important. So instead of being a fish out of water, come back to the water, just go into a different sea depending on your different situations and circumstances. So let's talk about modern and unknown problems, and that is social media, the internet era, okay? We have this problem that scholars of the past and the Prophet ﷺ has never seen, okay? So this is where Islamic thought and being able to understand the building blocks of this deen so that you can actually use it, and that's what scholars do behind closed doors. So when it comes to usage of social media, should we be using it? Is it haram? Is it makruh? Is it halal? It can get very confusing, right? Same thing with all of the other modern day issues such as manifestation and vision boards. So I am a conservative when it comes to social media. I go on a social media detox for 24 hours every single week. I have been doing this for about 2 years, and now I have added it for weekdays in which I do 8-hour gaps, okay? I believe social media is like the enemy at this point as a content creator, right? But that's me as a conservative. And this is where diversity of opinions come in. For somebody like me who is extremely busy, it is eating into my ability to focus in my prayers. So I have to, as a personal, on my personal individual level, I have to let that go. For another person, it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? So this is why when it comes to personal habits, there is no compulsion. You cannot compel someone in it because there are so many grades and differences. But if we actually teach people the purpose of these rulings, it can be a lot better. So what I do is I use an app called App Block, and I pay for it so that it can actually block me, because I understand how the mind works and how there are a lot of psychological tricks that are being used in order to actually take our time so that we can be consumers in this capitalist economy. Same thing with manifestation and vision boards. I do have a vision board on my computer right now, but I also understand the reason behind why manifestation is a bad thing, because I understand the aqidah, I understand all of the details behind the deen, so I know how to maneuver. For somebody like me, it would be okay. For other people, it might not be okay, and it might lead them towards doing a lot of shirky things or things that are not in line with Islam. So that is why knowledge, I think, is one of the most important things. Ijtihad is an Arabic word which means effort, and it is a concept that we should all know. So what that means is, at the end of the day, every single person will have to make independent decisions behind closed doors. The reason I said all of that is for you to see that there are a lot of things that are happening, but when it comes to your personal daily habits, there isn't any compulsion, and there's not going to be anybody who's going to follow you up. I don't know what kind of crazy person would do that at this point, but there is nobody who's going to follow you up and make sure that you're doing the right thing at the right time. It's going to be you, and it's going to be you on Judgment Day who has to be taken into account for what you do, the intention behind it, as well as the actions that you have done. And in this era, because of the modern day that we live in, you are able to hide a lot of things behind closed doors. This is causing a lot of corruption and unhappiness and a lot of bad habits, a lot of major sins such as suicide that is going to be, really accounted for. As well as on a family level, how do you interact with your spouse? How do you interact with your kids? And then that is when this disease becomes so big that it is impacting the community. And the reason I talk like this, and if y'all are really curious as to why I talk like this and why I'm just obsessed with this whole thing, it's because I've seen people die. And that kind of thing really changes you, especially when you have experienced directly somebody who looked the part, and but behind closed doors, they're experiencing one of the worst mental health crises. Since that day, since experiencing that experience, I haven't looked back. I don't judge a person by their cover. I want to know what's happening behind closed doors. That is the sunnah of the Prophet. He had a habit of muhasabah, in which, every single day he'll take himself to account. On a regular basis, he would ask, where's this person? What has gone wrong with them? I was just listening to khutbah a few days ago in which, one person wasn't there and his son wasn't there. And as soon as he found out, he started running. Imagine what he felt in his heart when he started running to him and said, what happened? And he said, my son has passed away. And realized it's more of, I was doing a lot of studying when it comes to emotional, how do we deal with people's emotions? Because right now we're very repressive. We use religion as a way of repressing people's emotions rather than helping them work through it. And he told him, and he said, would you rather have every door of Jannah open to you, or would you rather he comes here, he comes back to life, and he lives the whole life with you? That's a way of making people feel better. That Allah cares about this. He allowed something as grave as, your child passing away, and he's not just gonna take him away and not give you anything back, or not give the child anything back. So anyways, that's why you need to learn the religion in completion. So remember that no one will do the work for you. And that is the mindset that makes modern day challenges hard to resolve, because we really have gotten used to everybody just resolving our problems for us. You need to wash the dishes, we got a dishwasher for you. You need to wash your clothes, we got the whole laundry system. We got a washer and a dryer for you. You need to eat, somebody will come and drop off that food at your doorsteps, okay? And this is why it's crucial, and you can see this on my Knowledge Hub, in which I actually have secular education on that part, okay? We talk about mindset, psychologists, what are the current data, what is the economy, how are businesses being formed, how are they impacting our day-to-day life? I look into that as well. That's what I do. I cross-reference data. So what has happened culturally and mindset-wise is that we have gotten so used to rulings being served to us on a golden plate. But the system and history and war has detached us from our land. Scholars have died due to human-caused wars. So now it is up to us as individuals to deal with our own drama, with our own challenges, and we have to put in the work to get the results that we desire. And it has become easy and possible to run away from Islam, to run away from your own life, to live in the virtual reality world, and to be on survival mode at the expense of your akhirah, because you will be taken into account for all of the time that you have. So people just want to be told, is it haram, is it halal? Because I am trying to survive. I'm not trying to think about my religion. This is so sad. This is the condition that we have been put on. And spiritually speaking, what this does is that you just don't want to think anymore. You want to live in ghafla. You want to be heedless about what you do, which means you don't have any taqwa. You're not God conscious on everyday level, and you're not taking yourself into account. So the mindset that Waswas has put us in is that I just don't want to think because I'm tired tired. I've failed too many times. I don't understand. I feel so stupid. So many people segregate themselves. But I hope that this taught you that Islam is supposed to be easy. And it's not about turning off your brain, because as soon as you turn off your brain, it doesn't mean that waswas goes away, or that your desires go away, or that all of the burdens of life go away. You're just choosing and electing not to live life the way that you're supposed to. But this is one of the most dangerous states to be in, and this is living in ghafla. And this is exactly why a lot of people just wake up one day and they become an atheist, because they're not taking themselves into account. They're not looking at each thing that they're doing, their habits, in order to actually change them. The maqasid of this deen, and especially if you got absolutely nothing from this and it's like, this is a lot of information, I just want you to take away one thing. It is about living your life in taqwa consistently, to be conscious of your nafs and the waswas that is happening within you and navigating it. And that is why we have years of life, and it's not about just praying 20 minutes a day, okay? There is more to life. Every action, every part of life is an act of ibadah. So how do you do this? Change begins with intention, and success follows with consistency of action. So in order to make it happen, you need to do both of them together. And that is exactly why I created my habit systems bundle, in order to help you align your actions, your mindsets, and your intentions so that you can actually get into action. I'm doing this primarily because I just do not have enough time to do one-on-one consultations, and I would love to do that. But this is how it goes. Number one is there is a course to help teach you how to break free from old patterns, and this is focused on mindset, and this is where I take over 80 hours of research. I compiled all of them into just a 1-hour course so that you can understand how the mind works. We don't understand the mind at all, but that is our life. Like, that is literally our existence, and that is what is dictating everything that you do. After that, I have the Knowledge Hub, which is actually going to be 6 categories. You have the Islamic side as well as the secular side. So this means mind, body, soul, your finances, all of that stuff, your relationships, especially your relationships, in order to actually understand how everything interconnects. Because the biggest thing with religion is that all parts eat into other parts of it. So if you're not praying, it's most likely because of your relationships. It's most likely because of your finances. These are systematic situations that are outside of your control, which you can take control over. So that is why I believe that habit systems are the way out. You design systems in order to get there. And when it comes to going from the mindset part into the action part, you have to be very mindful of how you plan. The way that you plan can save you a lot of energy, time, attention, and money. And once you plan and you have done everything, is just action. So you need to track yourself. You need to take yourself into account, be it on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Once you're able to do that, the day-to-day challenges become extremely tiny because it never builds up. And that's the problem with a lot of people. It builds up, and that's where you get into that challenges. But that is the trap of shaitan. I wish you knew this and learned about this. I have a lot on my Knowledge Hub so you can understand who your enemy is so that you can overcome him. And once you're able to do that, day-to-day life won't be so hard. You're also able to avoid future problems before they build up too much. So your life becomes a lot easier, and keeping up with it and being happy and being fulfilled becomes so much easier. I've spent a lot of years coming to this point. If you want to get it, or you want to get the free versions of the free masterclass, make sure to get it. Until next time, peace.